Hello, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships. Today we're going to be talking about statistics, so I'm going to be looking at the WoW stats and numbers, and maybe I even hop over to my player profile. But periodically, I like to drift away from always showing different battles or the topic videos, and talk a little bit more about understanding yourself as a player, understanding your strengths, your weaknesses. What do your stats show you to help you improve as a player? And so I'll have some more videos. I have a couple of videos in mind over the next few weeks I'll be doing regarding this. We'll probably be looking more closely at stats. But the WoW Stats Numbers is a really cool website to go to. So this is NA. You can change the server that you're on, so EU, NA, Asia, so on and so forth. And there's a lot of different filters that you can go through here and seeing how you do as a player, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. But today's video, as we scroll down here, is I want to talk about reflecting on myself. I actually just did this before I started recording, and I was looking at what are my best performing ships, like what are my strengths as a player. When I started playing World of Warships, I actually was a battleship main, and that's drifted to cruisers, drifted from battleships to destroyers, and then a little more cruisers lately. So I've known that I've gone more from being a battleship player to more of a DD main. So actually that's most played ship type now, is destroyers versus battleships, then cruiser, and then aircraft carrier. So I'm most experienced with destroyers. So I was looking at damage ratio, all these type of things, but particularly I was interested in win rate. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you my 15 best performing ships in World of Warships, and I'll kind of talk about how I reflect upon that. And then I'll do another video soon, my 15 worst ships in the game. But one of the things I'm making a requirement is that the minimum battles have to be played as 20. Has to be at least 20 battles. It can't be like 5 battles in one ship, because it's like, yeah, that's probably likely because you haven't, perhaps haven't figured the ship out yet. So we're going to look at win rate. That's kind of more what we're going to be reflecting on this video, is what is my top 15 best performing ships here in World of Warships. And as I was going through the list, I'll talk briefly about each of the ships as I go down. But I was surprised when I looked at these 15. 9 of these ships are destroyers, 4 of them are cruisers, and only 2 are battleships. So that really points, when I look at this at first, I'm like, okay, wow, okay, a lot of my strengths as a player revolves more around being a destroyer player. And I think I understood this change taking place. I started playing World of Warships in fall of 2019. And then the last year, beginning of 2022, I think it was primarily the cause of the commander rework, and then they nerfed the battleships, or they nerfed brawling a lot. I really made more of the transition to playing more destroyers, and so because of that, I've kind of found my strength in the game in World of Warships. So you can see this ranges from 21 battles to 448 battles, because Massachusetts was my first ship that I paid for in the game, so she is the longest standing here. But let's look a little bit more at this. Okay, so 9 destroyers, 4 cruisers, 2 battleships. So my strengths are I do better as a destroyer player, at least in terms of when we look at the win rate. I mean, you can see the personal rating and average damage on some of these is pretty good. Others, it's a bit below average. It's below where it needs to be. So the first stuff, which I'm immensely proud of, is the Smith. The Smith is a premium American destroyer at tier 2. You can pick her up for, I think, like $1 from the premium shop online. I think she's cheaper on the premium shop than she is for picking up in their armory for doubloons, if I'm not mistaken. And my clan commander talked me into getting this ship, and that ship's just a load of fun. And I actually have not played it in a while, mainly because this is the purpose I'm doing this video. That I now hold, I'm a #1 slot on NA server in terms of run rate performance in the Smith. Which honestly at tier 2 is not really, it's nothing really to brag about. I just think it's funny because you get a lot of bots at the low tier, right? So that's a little bit more represented in this number, but Smith is a very fun destroyer and really good damage as well. The other thing that was surprising me actually is I was looking at these ships. I was surprised about learning about myself as a player was the Japanese torpedo destroyer line. So here we have Akatsuki, and then Kagero, or is question pronunciation of that ship. Both of these are really good. I've not actually played enough battles in Shimakaze yet, and I'm actually working on improving my win rate with that ship because I've only played it like 8 or 10 times. But then also the Yugamo, it's actually a little further down. Yeah, it's actually spot number 31, but my damage ratio in the Yugamo is like 5.14. I wrote this down, so that's why I can reference it so easily. So I was like, wow, I'm pretty good with that line. With the ambush, more that torpedo style of drawing in close, getting the torpedoes off, staying dark, and typically with these destroyers, I'm usually always alive the last several minutes of the battle, where a destroyer player can have a significant impact in the end game. And that is especially true. And I really like this line. So I actually use it as my research bureau grind line for the Shima line versus the Hugamo line. So pretty strong there. Nicholas, tier 5 American destroyer tech tree. She is a joy. I actually just Sunday night I had my 100th battle in the ship because I was looking around at it. And this is a... I mean, I think I would stick with Jingles. Like tier 4 and beneath is like, I would say seal clubbing, because when you hit tier 5, you're then facing tier 7 ships, right? But tier 5 Nicholas is more my relax, de-stress ship. A ship I like hopping into when I feel like random's high tier is going really bad. The ship really relaxes me. Really good reload time, good guns, decent AA, got the American smoke screens. And even though that the American destroyer line was my first ship line that I grinded, and so if you can see pretty much across the board of like Unicum, Super Unicum stats with the Nicholas, and she really helped. The gearing line helped me a lot in learning how to make the most of smoke screens, because you have such a long cooldown time on the smoke screens. But also having to get in close, utilize islands, utilize smokes to get torpedoes off until you go up the line where your torpedoes get a longer range. And then I did the Shimakaze line next, and so that I learned a lot from that and playing that line next. And if you're wondering what is the destroyer line I'd first recommend grinding fully through to tier 10, I would say is the British destroyer line, Daring. The line's very forgiving, and I think that's the best line that I think to grind here in World of Warships. So when you hop down to tier 5, it's just nice. Get away from a lot more of the gimmicks in the game, so on and so forth, and I've encouraged this too. So Nicholas is a very comfort ship for me, and dropping down to the lower tiers and getting away from the gimmicks, and then, not really much radar at tier 7. Next up is Salem. It's a premium American heavy cruiser. Twin sister of the Des Moines, except you have some different things going on with the ship. And only 28 battles in, the Des Moines line has taught me a lot, or playing Des Moines has taught me a lot. And then Salem is a bit more forgiving than Des Moines in terms of her super heal, so you can get away a little bit more with your positioning with Salem versus the Des Moines. But of course you can still be punished. But we have really good numbers here. It's a really good performing ship for me so far. I really enjoy it. I played the heck out of it during the Dirigible Derby or Airship Escort to get the more feel for it. So the first cruiser, right? The top 3 are destroyers, and we get to the cruiser. So Salem is performing really well, and I would say a lot of this numbers reflected in Des Moines, as I've learned a lot about the playstyle of the ship through Des Moines. But Salem's a little different, but that's a topic for another time. So our first tier 10 ship. So we go 2, 5, 7, 10. And then we're going to hop back down to 8 here in number the 5th slot, which is the Linen. World of Warships or Wargaming, they pulled the Linen. Oof. I don't remember if it was 10.4 or if it was 9.4. They removed the ship from availability to purchase in game. So I picked it up and I like it. So I've actually been pretty conscious in playing with this ship. She's just really strong at tier 8. A really big bully. She squashes tier 6 competition if you're top tier, and she can hold her own against tier 10, but you're going to facing a lot more HE spam, which is one of the reasons why Linen actually does alright because of her armor. And you can see good damage across the board, and even with the planes destroyed, because I like pushing with Linen. She does that role really well, and I also have the fighter planes, utilizing those. So I'm a bit of a brawler, right? This is a bit of a brawling type of reflected in both Linen and Salem. Then number 6 is the Friesland. She's European destroyer, tier 9. Have 50 battles on her with a 72% run rate. And Friesland is one of the ships in the game that among an increasing number of destroyers that Wargaming has been introducing into the game lately without torpedoes. So you have her twin sister, copy and paste, being the Groningen. But this ship revolves around just the guns, smoke, and really good AA with like a 6.4 concealment. So even though we're not getting, we're pretty average in our damage, maybe slightly, I guess I should say below average in terms of the damage performance, but I have a very high run rate because I really play Friesland around hunting enemy destroyers, because she has this 5-kilometer hydro, which is really good for that role. And also being able to scout torpedoes for your friendlies. So I'm able to make a pretty noticeable impact in playing the Friesland. Moving on to the Kolsik. It is a tier 8 British premium destroyer. And almost 50 battles, but 71.43% win rate. And this is among my top performing destroyers. She actually holds, and I check my notes here, she holds my second highest damage ratio in the game, being at 8.5, which is crazy high. And then the number 1 actually goes to Smith at 24.33. 24.33. So Kosik, she takes number 7th in terms of run rate performance, but 2nd place in terms of damage ratio among my ships. She's a gunboat destroyer. Only has a rack of 4 torpedoes. She has 8 guns and 4 turrets. Short range hydroacoustic search. The UK smoke screen, short action time, short cooldown time, and really good concealment, 5.5 if I'm not mistaken. So I use her to hunt down enemy destroyers as well. One of the biggest things that I've learned with destroyers in the game of World of Warships, well, not just destroyers, but in general, if your team is able to knock out the enemy destroyers first, then that increases your chances of winning. So I really like playing these different ships in the game that give me the ability to knock out enemy destroyers. I even catch them out sometimes with Salem's 8.5 kilometer radar. But the Friesland and Kolstik I use to that extreme of purposely hunting enemy destroyers, and then that always increases my team's chance of winning. So that's why some of these, with these particular ships, they're going to be higher and perform really well because I play that role. And once I knock out the enemy destroyers, then I can push in and start torping, dealing more damage to the battleships. The Minotaur is actually no exception to this. Checking my notes again for the Minotaur. She's actually holds the 4th slot in terms of damage ratio. She's a 65% run rate, and I use Minotaur as a radar Minotaur. You can take radar or smoke. She's a light tier 10 British cruiser, can easily be citadeled and wrecked, But I utilize islands pushing in, and I hunt enemy destroyers between a radar and 5-kilometer hydroacoustic search. Again, it's healthy. The number is healthily reflected here in terms of my performance. Even with almost 70 battles, we're doing really well with Minotaur, and I really like that playstyle. The Aigla, it has tier 6 premium French destroyer. She was my first premium ship in the game that I purchased for Cole when I started playing in the fall of 2019. And I was actually surprised to see that I actually do pretty well. I didn't actually expect her to be among my top ships, but we only have 23 battles in with her. Her AA is pretty mediocre, but her guns are really great, and her torpedoes are also really good. I think the torpedo range of these is 8 kilometers. Yeah, pretty sure it's not 9. Pretty sure it's 8. It's a decent torpedo reload time. So I've used Aigla a lot in ranked. I think she's a pretty good ranked destroyer at tier 6. And even though the enemy destroyers are going to spot me first if they have a better concealment than I do, I still like picking on enemy destroyers. And then once you get to them, very easy to push on. Taking number 10th, the 10th slot is the Alaska. Only 25 battles in the ship so far, with a 64% run rate. Alaska was also a ship that's been removed from the game, or sorry, removed for sale from the game. But you can pick her up during the Black Friday sales, which I do recommend. She's a really good ship. I picked her up when she was available for free experience for 1 million free XP. And honestly, I can't tell you what specifically I do really well with in terms of the Alaska, but she has the 10-kilometer long-lasting American radar. She has hydroacoustic search, 305mm guns, which hit really nicely. Really good AP, decent HE, the high explosive. And I try to sit near objectives, caps, cap control, which also I should mention is reflected in particularly Nicholas, Salem, Friesland, Krolstik, Minotaur, and Aigla. And also, in addition to focusing on destroyers of these ships, which you'll often find destroyers around the objectives being the caps. So that's also why I think the run rate for myself as the player is higher, because I'm playing around the objectives of the capture zones and focusing on taking out enemy destroyers when I'm in a ship that I believe is capable and does it really well. Alaska, I don't think, is the best ship for hunting destroyer by any means, but she performs a formidable. She's kind of like, a battle cruiser, but she was designed in real life historically to take on other enemy cruisers, so she does that role actually really well. 11th slot is Massachusetts Tier 8 Premium American Battleship. She is a monster, was really not great secondaries, 11.3 kilometers with the improved accuracy of the 5-inch guns. And she's a brawler. One of her strengths, or a couple of her strengths, are the secondaries. Her heal has a 40-second cooldown time versus the standard 80 seconds. And then also, she's very hard to Citadel. Very rarely do you use Citadel at Massachusetts because of her armor scheme. And sometimes it doesn't make sense because the ship should be more punishable, but with Massachusetts, you can get away with a lot. So she's a very forgiving ship. She's also a ship that is available during the Black Friday sales. You can get Massachusetts Black. So also a ship I definitely recommend. For a long time, I think she still is. I don't play her as much as I used to, but she's definitely one of my favorite battleships to play in the game. And you can see that my plane damage destroyed is 8. It's actually kind of funny because I had this game. I was recording it, but the recording messed up. But I broke through north. I think it was north. And I brawled 2 enemy battleships, killed them, and then I pushed in and I dealt with the enemy aircraft carriers, and I killed both of them, a tier 8 and a tier 6, I think it was. And so I got down 94 planes between them. So that's a fun memory for myself. Most planes I've ever shot down in World Warships was in Massachusetts because she has really good AA. So very fun ship. 12, I was surprised by this, is the Helena. She's a tier 7 American light cruiser. So she's the last of the 4 cruisers on this list. And 27 battles, almost a 63% run rates. And then our personal rating, our average damage is below average, and then our average frags is bad. So we don't tend to get a lot of kills with this ship. But we have really good stats in terms of shooting down enemy aircraft. And the cruiser line, I think I grinded through, I don't know if it was Worcester or Des Moines was my first cruiser line that I grinded up through. But Helena was a lot of fun. She's pretty decent, I think, still as a tier 7 cruiser in the game. So I was surprised to actually see her on this list. I didn't think I was actually so good with this ship, which is true in terms of look at the average damage and personal rating and average kills that we would get per battle. So nice to see this ship on here. Kagero, tier 8 Japanese torpedo destroyer, 40 battles played, 62.5% run rates with some super unicum personal rating here and really good damage, and also with average frags. Kagero is a very good tier 8 Japanese destroyer with, I don't know if she carries the 5.4 conceal, or if it's 5.4 or 5.6. I can't remember off the top of my head. But she is a really fun destroyer to play. This is one of the best battles I've had with her. And also I had a really crazy good damage spotting match. 181,000 is really high. So that was really good stuff. And so she's just a really solid tier 8 torpedo destroyer. You have torpedo destroyers, you have gunboats, and then you have hybrids. Hybrids being Kosek is a gunboat but leans hybrid, Nicholas hybrid, and then Kid, that's gunboat leans to hybrid, or hybrid leaning to gunboat. But Kagero is a very nice tier 8 tech tree destroyer to play. Taking spot 14 is the Kid. This is one of my favorite destroyers in the game, tier 8 American destroyer. I have 77 battles played with her with a 62.34% run rate with 2,588 personal rating. And the planes, this number right here, number of planes shot down, the most we've done in a battle with Kid is 67. So her strength lies with her AA, and also that she gets a repair party. She's one of the few American destroyers at tier 8 that gets a repair party. And so she does quite well. She has really good guns. She's like a Fletcher class destroyer at tier 8 versus like Fletcher at tier 9 as an example. So the repair parties give you a lot of grace and very forgiving, because particularly with Kid, she's a knife fighting close encounter destroyer. So I play her exclusively for hunting enemy destroyers and enemy aircraft carriers as well. She gets 1 rack of torps, 9.2 kilometer range. There are 5 torpedoes in the 1 rack that do decent damage. But she's a knife fighter. She likes to take on enemy destroyers. I have a good number of dreadnoughts with Kid, because I also take India Delta combat signal in helping get more health back. So not surprised, again, another ship that I play for hunting destroyers in HyperX. And then taking the 15th spot, which I'll end with this, is Tashkent. She's a tier 9 Russian gunboat destroyer. But she has a really good torpedo reload time. I've done a lot of nasty things with her torpedoes. I think she gets 3 racks of 3 torps. So I think it's 9 torpedoes, if I remember correctly. I might completely be speaking nonsense right there. But this is something I want to do a video on eventually, is do a torpedo build Tashkent. I've had some really good games in Tashkent, so 60% win rate with 51 battles, decent public or personal rating, and above average damage. And she's just a fantastic destroyer. So, with all this being said, as we're gonna wrap this video up, this is from me, and the main part of this video is I want to encourage you to do this for yourself. Hop onto WoW Stats and Numbers on whatever respective server you're on, click on the win rate and see what is your best performing win rate ships. And that will tell you a lot about yourself. So I could be looking at this and saying, and telling people, well, what I could say is I'm a battleship main. I'm really good in battleships. But then when I come to here, I look at this and say, oh, actually I'm a really good destroyer player when I'm looking at my top 15 ships in the game of World of Warships. And then cruisers next, and then battleships. You know, so that's like the example that I have for myself here. So when I know my strengths as a player, I can find that I'm not getting as frustrated with the game. So if I feel like I have a lot of battleship games are not going so well, and I'm kind of hitting my head up against the wall, well, it's like, well, actually, Flimsy, you're it can make sense, but you're more of a destroyer player. You're not so much a battleship player per se. Even though I do overall well in battleships, but destroyers have been my sweet spot over the last year. Just because you can have, in my experience, I think the destroyers are the best class in the game to have the most impact in matches, in winning the battles, and getting the victories for your teams. But of course, as we have more aircraft carriers and submarines in the game, we're gonna have to see if that still holds true or not, as Wargaming tries to quote unquote balance submarines, allegiance airlines. Anywho, so yeah, so get on Wild Stats and Numbers, look up your player profile. You can even search clans, you can look up specific warships, and just see what do the statistics tell about yourself. I mean, you don't even have to look at the ships. You could just hop on here and say, oh, my level of personal rating is with destroyers is Unicum. Or I can hop down here and see win rates. Oh, destroyers hold that. Surprisingly, aircraft carriers don't hold that because I don't play aircraft carriers hardly at all, and I've actually been working to improve this win rate every now and then. So I'm like, oh yeah, so it's destroyer, cruiser, battleship, then aircraft carrier, where here it's destroyer, battleship, cruiser, in terms of the win rates in the game. So I hope this helps you a little bit. This isn't a glorious video of showing these really outrageous battles and things like that, featuring a cool replay, but it's talking more about the specifics and how do you improve as a player. So I'm going to be having a little bit more videos on this topic, and probably tied in, of course, with the new player guide series and the intermediate player guide series. And knowing yourself as a player will help you a lot in your playing of World of Warships, but doesn't mean you should only play, like for myself, means I shouldn't just play only destroyers because that's what I'm good at, so I should just only play destroyers. No, I can work on improving my cruiser gameplay, which I've been spending a lot of time in doing that, as well as my battleship gameplay. So with all that being said, if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you subscribed, thanks so much. I appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.